and we'll shortly put up the PowerPoint. Thank you. Madam, just one more, because
Yeah.
so Danish is supposed to handle the PowerPoint. Danish, you are available? Danish, please check your email.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, check that
Okay, sir.
NP Beck email, and there will be a PowerPoint. So please make the presentation. Madam cannot make the presentation because she's on a mobile.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Okay, sir.
Shamim, நான் ஃப்ளைட் மோடு
Yes,
போட போய்
ma'am.
அது ஃப்ளைட் மோடு போட போயிட்டேன்.
Madam, you can start, madam. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Prasanna, once again for helping in conducting this short-term course on gender development. And there has always been some kind of dropout, and it happens today also. But anyway, we are there to always fill the gap. And so, as I already pointed out, I'll be talking on gender mainstreaming strategies, what kind of measures are to be taken, and I'll be talking in the context of the sustainable development goals. Actually, I may be using the slide as it is prepared, otherwise it will be available for you. Maybe I would go even little deviating from the PPT. So it is there only for a suggestive purpose, and you can always pay attention here, whatever we will be interacting. So gender mainstreaming, the very concept itself, some of you are there without women studies background, and you had listened to 3 presentations. Of course, 2 presentations on the first 2 days were very much on focusing on gender issues, particularly on the context of COVID and how the work, how to rethink work that Dr. Geeta was focusing on. And so gender is something which is a social construction in the society, which is given by the society. It can be changed also. So gender is what a person to do, be it a boy or a girl or a man or a woman, whether she should behave like this or like that, and whether she can do that or he can do it or not. So something like that. So gender is something given by the society, defined by the social institutions, the dominant force, the people who were in the public life. And definitely you are aware that who are the dominant force in the society. The dominant order accordingly came from that dominant force. So people who possessed power. So where does this power come from? So this power is through the ownership of resources, control over resources, etc. So this is one aspect. So right from the beginning, the capitalist, the feudalistic, and the imperialist ideologies are ruling the economy and society, where whatever policies are being devised and implemented, they were all decided by the people who were in power. And the power also tried to be, it was not decentralized. It was about, it was not always centralized. And even any attempts to decentralize power also hasn't yielded results as we expected. And the second aspect is who were the people behind policy making. The people who were in public life. Since long, it is the women, it is the men who were in public life. Now women started coming and participating in education, in employment, in decision-making positions, in politics, and in also managerial positions, etc. But that was not the case. Even in Tamil, we have the proverb called "Adupudum pengalukku padippadarkku." So women are going to be in the kitchen. What is the need for their education? That is what it was. So that is a kind of the perception about women's education. And in religious text also, it was told that women, instead of going to school, she can serve the men in the family. So they have to choose whether to go to school or to serve the men in the family. That is what the religious text also intimated us. And therefore, women hardly had any chance to interact in the public life and public space. And therefore, whatever we now, whether it is the positive or negative or fortunate and unfortunate, whatever the facilities we have, etc., are happen to be men-centric. And of course, you said, as I already pointed out, it is sometime the people centric, people in the sense the dominant order centric also. So with that background only, we are talking about gender mainstreaming. So gender mainstreaming tries to take into account the kind of needs, the situations, the circumstances, and the interests of men, women, and other gender, and accordingly provide or devise policies to incorporate the needs of every individuals in the society. So there is a need for engendering, like in the beginning, right from the beginning, the kind of facilities available, the kind of opportunities extended to men and women, etc., were not equal, and there is a connection between the kind of opportunities available to men and women and the power relationship. So the unequal power relationship provides the society that is very much attributed to the unequal opportunities in the society. So, and the other one I told about gender, how it is constructed. So there is a construction that women are supposed to take care of the family, the care economy, and the social reproduction. Whereas the women should go, I mean, men should go out and earn for the family, and whatever the kind of issue that the men face, they are supposed to be the breadwinner of the family, provider of the family. If they are not, then they will also be ridiculed, they will be teased, and they will not be respected by the society. Even the family, the parents won't respect if the men do not go for work. And therefore, this is the construction, and this is further extended to space division also. So in the big, and like you have divided the work, the role, gender role, that men are supposed to be working outside, and working in the sense the paid work. You have work both at home and outside, and whatever work you do there in the private space, the home, the family, are happen to be unpaid, and therefore you don't even recognize that as work. As it was pointed out there by Geeta the other day, the census till 1981 census, the work performed by women were not at all counted as work, because census defines work as productive work, which includes only the paid work. So women do all the work which is not paid, and therefore it is actually quote unquote unpaid work, so unproductive work. So that is the kind of a perception on women's work, and so opportunities are not extended equally because of this division of work on the one hand, that is a role, and that is further extended to the space, the private versus public space. So in the private space, I mean, public space, mostly the men are operating, and they have to go out, they have to go and earn for the family, and they have to also interact with the public people, develop contacts, and also engage themselves in other development activities, which in a way was believed to be contributing to the overall development of the economy or society. But unfortunately, there was a complete neglect of their gender, another gender, which is 50%, constituting almost 50%, and that is the women. So when women's needs and facilities are not included, then it is very difficult to claim that there is equal opportunity, gender equality. And now coming to the Sustainable Development Goals, you have the fifth goal talking about this, and of course you had this Millennium Development Goals also, and there you at the third goal talking about gender equality. So this actually this gender mainstreaming concept as such to accommodate the needs and interest and the facilities required for the women and men and the other gender in the policies started right from 85 in the Nairobi World Conference on Women, and it was further established as a gender policy, international gender equality policy, through the Beijing Platform for Action. And in 1995, fourth United Nations World Conference on Women in Beijing onwards, it was taken as the policy. So gender mainstreaming is nothing but a public policy which talks about the mainstreaming of the needs in the policy, that is right from the design to the implementation and evaluation. So next slide. So there are three important questions to be raised. Why? I mean, what is gender mainstreaming? That was all I was talking about. Why and how? So what I was talking, because there is unequal access to and control over power, resources, human rights, and institutions, including the justice system. You all agree with this. And this emanates from the historical unequal spacing of women, placing of women into different gender roles, different societal expectations, gender, different space being provided, etc. So, and also gender situations, the situations which women and men, the circumstances from which men and women are being socialized also differ according to the country, the age, the ethnic, the social origin, and other factors. So it is not that gender differences are homogeneous. It is not that all women face the same issues, whether they are in the US or UK or in India, or the men also face the same kind of gender issues, whether they are placed in the Western or in this part of the globe. So women and men are not homogeneous. They are different. They differ across the as per the placement wherever they are. So we need to take into account these gender differences right from the designing to implementing. So this is what I mean. What? Why? Let us next slide. Move on to the why. So there are a number of studies, research studies, which have been conducted to understand the cost of gender inequality. So you all agree that when 50% of the population's the skills, the whatever the other capabilities are not taken into account and not utilized, and where is the question of contributing to the or optimizing the resources in the economic terms. So you have to utilize the resources to the fullest possible optimum. But unfortunately, in the name of construction in the society, gender division of labor, and mostly unpaid work being imposed to be performed by women, the equal opportunity is not being extended. And this has a direct impact on the kind of development, the growth you have been experiencing in the country. So yesterday it was mentioned that going to the international finance and international trade, how women are constituting to just 10% of the women entrepreneurship, and as in the leadership positions also, it is now slowly growing, and sector wise there is a difference, but in general it is not actually happening. I am talking about this leadership positions also. This is very, very crucial, leave alone women's education. Now it is happening more and more. Gender gap is really coming down in participation of education. And of course, it is a established fact that for the past 2.5 years or so, the employment participation of women has been on the decline. And though it was 30 and order, it was 32% or 37% sometime back in some 2 decades back, but slowly coming down, and now it's stagnated to 25%. And we have to find out whether there is any cause for this. And it is not that the women's participation in education has contributed to decline in participation of employment. There are several studies which has proved. And one important aspect that was established is that in the middle class, there is a tendency to make the women withdraw from the labor market just because the income is sufficient to manage. So that is the perspective from which the women labor or women's participation in employment is being viewed. Women's participation in employment is not just to bring income. Their skill, their education.
Madam, 1 minute. Sorry to interrupt. Now the PPT is available. PPT is available. Which slide do you want to display first now?
Yeah, I said why slide, third slide, I believe. I kept saying that next slide.
Danish, slide number 3, please.
It is starting with why.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So I keep saying next slide, but there is some order difference also. But
no, the anyway. PowerPoint is up only now, madam. Just now the PowerPoint is uploaded.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. So this is what the policies. Okay. So this is what. Is it okay now? Can I continue?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. The slides you can just taking my presentation, you can just see which slide. Anyway, this is a full screen, so we could not locate which number. So now I am moving to how. There is a slide is captioned as how. So I was talking about why, now how. So so I don't deny that there is no gender equality there is no progress happening in terms of achieving towards and moving towards a gender equality. But there is also reversal trend that is happening, where I have pointed out the employment, how women's employment is on the decline. So, in the context of increasing participation of women increasing participation of women in education, it is quite logical to think that more women will be joining the labor force. But unfortunately, the reverse is happening. So, this is a paradox. And so what we expect is that on the one hand, there are affirmative actions by government, the individuals, the families, the civil society, etc., etc. But unfortunately, what is being expected is not happening. And always we point to the kind of, when we talk about social indicators, there are increase in the violence against women also. So on the one hand, there is a decline in participation of women in the development context. We claim that there is a development and we are moving towards a civilized society, but unfortunately, this is not happening. And so, what is needed? How it has to be done? Gender mainstreaming is to be done. That is very important. So, I am talking now on the how slide. So, gender analysis is to be made. What is gender analysis? In very simple terms, that it is just taking stock of how resources are being distributed between men and women, of course, transgender. Whether the resources are equally being accessible, whether, for example, property right. Property right is highly unequal. The UN says that the women are performing two-thirds of the work, but hardly own 1% of asset. 1%, whereas 66% are 1%. This is a kind of a gender inequality that is prevailing in the society. And in the leadership position, I have already pointed out less than 10%. And thanks to now the political participation in parliament elections has reached to 14%. And though we have been asking for 33% reservation for the past 30 years and odd, it is still pending. So what is needed is that we need to do gender analysis. Gender analysis is nothing but even in the family, you can just do a gender analysis. How the children you have boys and girls, and how boy is being treated, what is invested on him, and what kind of courses is being offered by the parents to opt for, and which college, which institution, which state, within the state or outside the state, etc., etc. And in the intra-household distribution of nutrition also, talking about, leave alone those participation in education, even the nutrition context, health context, there are differences. And I have witnessed myself in my stay in a village for a research for past, some 20 years back, that whenever a woman, girl is sick, they will try to go for home remedies, whereas for boys they will take to doctor. And the nutrition, they feel that some say egg is nutritious, so they will offer 2 eggs for a boy, whereas 1 egg for a girl, or 1.5 eggs for a boy and half an egg for a girl. So this is what the nutrition. It is not deliberately done, which is connected with the construction. It is said that women are supposed to be staying back, and therefore they need not have to be taking much. And men are going out, and therefore they have to. So they have to be healthy enough and strong enough to perform whatever work. And another example I can say, family planning, which we call permanent sterilization. So this is hardly, totally targeting the women, not the men. There are easiest methods for men to go and undergo this sterilization, and they can resume to work immediately. But this is not happening. When you ask this question to people, they said, no, women after all staying back, and they can bear whatever the side effects, whereas men, they are going out, and therefore actually there won't be any side effect for men because it is done outward, whereas for women only it is complicated, and it will have future implications also on their health. So these are all because of the construction, the patriarchal notions prevailing in the society, and therefore the gender analysis also should start from that particular perspective, in a very gender equality perspective. You have to do in a gender justice perspective. So you do that in the family and extend to the workplace also. I can share some examples, like when you are there in the university system, be a student or a teacher or a staff, you have to analyze. We did a study on gender participation in decision making committees by Bharathasan University. So similarly in the gender perceptions of boys and girls also. So there is a division, like how many women are there in the decision making bodies, how many committees are there. There are around 100 and odd committees. For a small, very small committees, very not much strategically important committees to a very strategically important committees. So how many women are there participating or being nominated there in the committee to be and there in the committee, and how many are not. And many a time you can see even in the decision making committees like syndicate, you will have only the men. Of course, one is elected, one is coming, like faculty members will be on their seniority basis, and the other are nominated and also. So wherever there is scope, for example, nomination from the governor office comes. So there you can say if there are three, at least one should be there as women. So this is what I mean the gender analysis. So when women are there, I mean the gender sensitive women. Gender sensitive women are there in the committees. Definitely, there will be a change in approach in terms of attending the needs of the women. So what is actually needed? It is not that gender mainstreaming is a big issue, but what is lacking is the political will. So it is against the religious establishment, it is against the patriarchal, imperialistic, capitalistic and feudalistic culture that is being deep-rooted for thousands of years together, and also commitment. I mean, that is why people are finding it difficult to implement. First thinking of it is itself is difficult, thanks to women's organizations, gender sensitive people who have really helped in establishing it, but there is still a political will, that is a lack of political will to implement it. And second is that, okay, and the leadership is there in an institution, they have to be, what I should say, they have to have the commitment and awareness. Commitment and awareness, uh, and third is the responsibility of all actors. So it is not that the state or the government alone will be responsible for it, as it was discussed in the earlier context. Every individual has a responsibility to it. So there are three important things: that the political will is needed, and everyone should have the commitment and the responsibility. Next slide about the key characteristics of gender mainstreaming. And I have already mentioned that it has to promote gender equality, and also it has to complement the roles of or how women and men are on transgender or interdependent and complement each other. It is not that men should alone do this or women should do this role. For instance, let me substantiate this. The kind of the division of work in a particular factory or the office, any training, I mean, any woman or a man, if training is given and also equal encouragement opportunity is extended, definitely they will be doing. Let's take for an example. For example, if I have myself witnessed in a garment factory, the machines are being operated only by men. The women are doing all the folding, the cutting, the wastages, packing, etc. in a textile company. So it is not that the women are not capable of. Women, if the training is given there to operate in the machine, they would have been performing. But somewhat it has gone to the notions of the corporate that this cannot be done by women. And also it is associated with other aspect that if they meet with an accident, then they will lose their organs, then it is difficult for them to get married off. So this is what it is connected. So it is to be understood that any opportunity, if it is extended to both men and women, of course, given the limitation, if I am not interested to do that, let me be excluded. But I am interested, if I am not trained on that and no opportunity was given to me, and therefore I am not able to. So that kind of issues are to be extended. So with this introduction about the concept of gender mainstreaming and how it has to be done, why it is needed, and what strategies to be followed, now I move to the Sustainable Development Goals. So it is titled as UN SDGs 2030 Agenda. So Sustainable development goals, of course, people who are in the development field must be aware of it. We have failed to achieve the Millennium Development Goals by 2015, and therefore UN and the member countries have gone for immediately gone for this sustainable development goals, and they have identified 17 sustainable development goals with 169 targets, and each sustainable goals have some suggestive targets. Of course, there are other targets which can be at the micro level added, and need not be confining only to those targets which have been established, enlisted there. And it is the goal 5, SDG 5 talks about achieving gender equality and women's empowerment. And it says that it is an integral part. It is not me saying this. I mean, the UN and other organizations, development organizations, they underlined that the gender cuts across all these 17 goals. So this is very significant. So here comes the gender mainstreaming. So unless gender has been recognized, inclusive strategies are being implemented and added, incorporated into the plan of actions, it is difficult to realize this SDG by 2030. Actually, as I already pointed out, the Millennium Development Goals could not be achieved by 2015 because of the lack of filling the gender gap. And that is also going to be reflecting in when it is not happening there in the with the SDGs. So I have listed can you just shift to the slide which lists about 17 SDGs, the 17 sustainable development goals to transform our world. So this is to transform world. So if you want to transform the world, you need to have this gender integrated into all the 17 goals. Why I am insisting on this? I think Ganesh can go to this slide. The 17 sustainable development goals. So I have listed it, you can just see that no poverty, zero hunger, no poverty is the first SDG, followed by zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable clean energy. So it goes like this. So what I am trying to say here is this, as UN pointed, it's not me, it is an integral, gender is an integral part of all the 17 SDGs. So take for example poverty. So it says that no poverty. So we should not, we have to, into 2030, we have to reach a situation where nobody will be suffering from poverty. So this is, so how you will, and you know poverty has women's face. Again, it is UN says, not me. And whenever there is a livelihood issue or poverty issue in the family, in the household, they will definitely be affecting the woman more than the men. Let me substantiate. So, for example, only little rice is there. So who will, what will the women, whether it is a mother or the sister or the aunt, whoever it may be, யார் அதை பகிர்ந்துக்கிறது நீங்க பார்த்திருப்பீங்க. So it will certainly be the mother will serve to the members of the family, the children, the elders, and of course the male members. And she will starve if it is nothing is left over. Then she will starve and proceed. So this is what I mean. The simple example I am giving. So poverty has its women's face, and if you extend this to work, if livelihood opportunities are, there is lack of livelihood opportunities, it is the women who are fired first. Even yesterday it was pointed out there by Dr. Prasanna in the international finance presentation that as employees there are more women employed in the international trade institutions, but unfortunately whenever there is any deployment, it is the women who are fired out, and it is not only there and everywhere. So any company or even in agriculture. So it is because you have to connect now to the gender division of labor. It is established already that men are supposed to be the breadwinner and the women are the what I should say, the people secondary. It was even established again that women's income or women's role is treated as secondary and supplementary. The income, the woman's income would be the most primary income to the family, but still they don't claim that their family, their income is primary. And therefore when you want to eliminate poverty by 2030, You have to necessarily focus on women's employment, women's participation in decision making, and integrate gender into poverty alleviation programs, where you have to take into consideration the kind of issues, the necessities to be incorporated. That is second. I'll just quickly go through because there will be time shortage. The zero hunger. So that means it is connected with poverty. See, the hunger households are vulnerable, more vulnerable than the poverty households. At least poverty means you have something to do, but hunger means you have nothing. So by 2030, the second goal is to achieve zero hunger. So it is followed by the no poverty goal only. So if there is no poverty, then definitely hunger will be absent, definitely, because hunger is ahead of poverty. And you address hunger first and then only move to poverty. And therefore, so how many, if you, even now, if you go and take stock of the hunger households and the persons who suffer with hunger, you definitely realize that more women will be there with zero, I mean, with hunger. And so given that, how gender is to be incorporated. So when you are talking about gender policy, or when you talk about a policy on hunger-free society, then we have to. In the slide, I'm on the slide 17 sustainable goal. There it is only point given, but I'm substantiating. Anybody feels that I'm fast? Okay, so I am asked to go little slow. I'll stick to that. I'm a little conscious of the time. So this is what you have different SDGs, and the Ganesh can project SDG 17 SDGs. I have listed there the goal. Is there? Okay. So that is followed by good health and well-being. So I already told poverty and hunger, they are connected with well-being also. When women suffer or men suffer from poverty and hunger, health won't be ensured. Therefore, in order to have good health and well-being, you have to address the issues of poverty and hunger first. And it is not simply taking ensuring food security alone. You have to also ensure proper healthcare facilities and balanced diet to be. It is not simply that one time food is available and therefore people are out of hunger. No, it has to be also balanced diet so that people will not, what I should say, feel shortage of the whatever the other nutrients needed. And that is followed by quality education. Okay, quality education, it is happening thanks to Government of India, Government of Tamil Nadu, and also the people who are proactive in introducing or helping to introduce the various policies to improve the quality of education. We have been talking about education, improving the quality of education, inclusive education, and the very important issue is the access to education. So when it is when you talk about quality in quality education, I told that there is a division in the society, like which course the woman should choose for and which men. Of course, now in the middle class and the upper middle class, the equation is changing, and the women and our girls are performing, and based on merit, they just enter into the technical courses or in the other courses which are quite difficult to get admission, but because of sheer, what I should say, the merit, women are participating. It is not that the women are not able to, they are able to get more marks, but in certain households, for example, at least below 50, I'm talking about middle class, upper middle class, maybe constituting about 20-25%. In the rest of this, you have the lowest bottom, that is around 10-20% of the population, where poverty and hunger are still prevailing. It is difficult for these girls to take into education. And of course, I cut short because the other goals are there. Quality of education is important component, and irrespective of gender, whether it is a woman or a woman man, they have to be ensured with quality education, and therefore, and gender has to be an integral part. And fifth goal talks about gender equality. So gender equality and empowerment of women and girls are connected. And when gender equality is ensured, it is not only helpful for the women, it is also equally helpful for the men and the society as a whole. So that is the perspective in which we have to see gender equality. It is not to be understood or taken in the sense that if you move to or if you disseminate the opportunities, extend opportunities, and distributes opportunities to both men and women equally, then men will be losing, or the people who have been in power will be losing. So that is a kind of a perspective that should be given up. It is if you integrate women, what I quote Mr. Prabhanjan, who is no more now. He was talking in a particular seminar. பெண்களுக்கு உரிமை வழங்காமல் ஆண்கள் விடுதலை அடைய முடியாது அப்படின்னு சொன்னாரு. So if women are, I mean, men are to be liberated, women should be given the freedom to make their own decision, participation, etc. But unfortunately, this is not seen in that perspective. When women take up the role, there is a kind of a jealous and enviness coming from the other gender. So that should be whether the women, and there are also other issues like women take up, perform and excel in a particular context, be it a leadership position or in politics or in a managerial role, then they will attribute that to the women good. Like women, I know how she got this position, etc. When men receive the same role and got to some positions of leadership, that is attributed to their merit. Whereas for women, it is attributed to their womanhood. Like character assassination is very common, irrespective of whether it is a management position or political position or any other leader position. I'm not generalizing, but it is happening. So in this context, we have to be very careful to invite and encourage more women, entertain more women to join in all the fields, therefore gender mainstreaming will take place. So I go on add, I mean, when I said or UN said that gender should be an integral part of all the SDGs, I should substantiate in all the 17 goals, but due to paucity of time, I just finished with this 5 goals. Maybe the other 6 I should focus on, because I'm working right now on this issue of what is this goal 6 says, clean water and sanitation. So clean water and sanitation is a major concern. It is something to do with the what you call the health of the human being, and therefore when we talk about goal 3, that is gender health and good health and well-being, this is connected with goal 6 also, clean water and sanitation. Because I already told that gender cuts across all the 17 goals. So we recently conducted a study, it is still to be completed, about the kind of sanitation facilities at the workplaces for women. And for some categories, the unorganized sector, there is complete absence of the sanitation facilities. Leave alone simple access to toilet, leave alone these mental hygiene needs or the needs to what I said, the gender mainstreaming needs to sanitation. So if gender mainstreaming in sanitation is to take place, you have to have facilities attached to the mental hygiene needs also. I often quote this example, like whenever I go out in the big, whether it is a 5-star hotels or simple hotels, you will find the ashtrays. So what does it convey? That men smoke, or women also, it's no denial. There is an ashtray to put that ashes. So that is everywhere kept, whether it is a very big or a small hotel. But and also you have other toiletries, but no hotels will provide a sanitary napkin. So now women are also, that is what I mean. The beginning, women were not traveling much, and therefore they didn't go, stayed in hotels, etc. And therefore you were not providing those facilities. But now women are also going, and young women are also going. It is not that every time they will carry sanitary napkins with them. So therefore, it is necessary that the hotels can also mainstream the gender needs while talking about this stay. And similarly, there's toilet constructions. You have the facilities meant for men. whether it is airport or railway stations, wherever you go. But same approach should also be seen there to provide a vending machine or an incinerator to dispose the used sanitary napkins. Slowly it is happening, and large corporates are there to incorporate such needs, but it is not happening. But in this study, we found that the construction workers, the street vendors, the domestic workers, and even the women working in retail sectors, in the blocks and buildings, and they are not able to get really these supportive sanitation facilities. Maybe some exceptions are there. I don't totally say that, but construction industry, where women are mostly engaged in, and most of the women commute for about 100 kilometers up and down every day, they are not able to get facilities, and they, if at all they use in the morning there, immediately after getting down there the bus stand, they use the sanitation facilities there, or they use there at home and go back home and use their toilet. That means for 12 hours together they are not. So I think this is enough for you to catch up how gender mainstreaming is required in the sanitation context. And water also. There are many other examples and I can give, but and of course there are the goals like affordable clean energy, different work and economic growth, all such. So everything. So sustainable cities also there, and responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and justice. So these are all the different goals where, without attending to the needs of every individual in the society, be it a man or a woman or transgender or LGBT, it is difficult to claim that the gender equality be ensured. Simply, in a very ephemetic or in a very superfluous manner, people will say that now women are also found in every field and they are participating. But it is euphemism. It is not. It is an illusion, I should say. If you go deeper and analyze, it is not the very root of it. The in-depth level, it is not happening. Maybe women are into education. Okay, now coming to education, and why they are not participating in employment, that is a question. So now I request Ganesh to move to some tabulated slide, different development approaches. I skip because of the time. So I have just shown there the different development approaches. When I talk about gender mainstream approaches, I should also say what are the actual development approaches and the differences. I'll try to spend 2-3 minutes there, because I have to finish with at least in a 5 minutes or so that you will all be interacting with me. I'll just show the slides because there is a lack of time to explain. So this we had 3 different approaches in the gender development or gender mainstreaming purposes. So in the initial period was women in development approaches, and that was changed to women and development, and later to gender and development approaches. The first 2 were talking about women in development approach, a little improvement over or progress over the second, that is women and development, that is like enveloping women into development process. But in the beginning, the women in development approach was just taking women as a passive person whose needs are to be like we also have 2 gender needs, the passive and strategic gender needs. Passive gender needs is like stereotyping, like the women are doing this role as per the construction in the society, and therefore they have to be provided this, like women are doing the household work. Now our government of Tamil Nadu has provided the mixie, the grinder, the stove, etc., and reinforcing, okay, you cook. Strategic gender needs is supposed to be doing like this. Okay, I am providing mixie, grinder, and now men also join and cook. If that is the case, even that is not simply this, simple explanation for, I'm just giving example. Strategic is something long term. Passive gender need, practical gender need something the short term. So long term gender needs are to bring the women into the developmental process and envelop the women everywhere in the part, right from the design to the evaluation part. So women in development approaches were could not succeed, and therefore we moved to gender and development, women and development. And later it was understood that okay, it is not the women alone who are being discriminated in the society. It is the women, men, the transgender, the LGBT group, etc. And therefore we have to move to gender and development. So in the gender and development approach, I can just say some 2-3 phrases. Like I told earlier, it is a long-term need. So there it is trying to address the strategic needs, like training to sensitize the judiciary on domestic violence or rape, or training on the male politicians on discriminatory practices against women. So all these things. So when in it is gender uh, and development, the focus was different. So now we are implementing and operating on that. And in this gender and development approach context only, I'm talking about gender mainstream. So now I request Ganesh to move to the other slide, where I'm talking about the gender expertise. It is a cycle, a diagram. So please project that. So, gender expertise. So, I already told that gender, Ganesh, the person in charge there in spec, can you project that slide, a diagram?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
Okay, okay. So now we have see how gender mainstreaming is to be, because I hardly have 2-3 minutes. How it has to be done. So it is not that gender mainstreaming is done there in the beginning. So for example, now education has taken place. Okay, more women are coming, girls are going to school, and now they have to. There is a right to education policy, and every children should be in the school, etc. And there are also other initiatives like SSA, which is taking care of the bringing the children, dropout children back to school. And there are different approaches also. And it is not okay, you have done more children should be in the school and girls should not drop out, etc. And some measures have been done. But the next is women should also participate in education, sorry, employment. It is not that gender mainstreaming has been done there in the what you call the education context alone. It has to be extended to other contexts. So that is what, when you talk about, it has to be holistic. And when you are talking about a project or a program, it has to be there. It is linking to the education program, which is attempting the girls to be retained there in the school and continue their higher education, should also be linked to what I should say participation in labor market. So that is missing. So that's what I claim here in the cycle. I can explain that there are 5 stages. So gender mainstreaming should be focused on design while talking about program, and it has to be there in planning, because in while designing you talked about gender mainstreaming and you have incorporated everything, but you have not done anything on planning, then it is not going to help. And the implementation. See, definitely there will be gaps. We will be saying something there in the design, and the planning we will be doing something and exclude something else. And I mean, whatever has been decided there in the design, and moving to implementation, there will still be gap, and then monitoring evaluation. So all the 5 stages of a project, whether it is any development project. For example, you have skill development corporation implementing skill development. So there are government entrepreneurship development programs which insist that women should be given 50% of the assistance with subsidy. So that is what I mean gender mainstreaming. So it is not that a particular entrepreneurship development scheme has been implemented, but nothing was spoken about or mentioned about women's participation. So when Madam Jayalalitha was there, the NEEDS program was introduced, New Enterprise Entrepreneurship Development Scheme. And she insisted that 50% of the people who participate to take credit with subsidy under NEEDS should be women. So this is what for this industrial estate, etc., etc. So then monitoring evaluation, and here the design and planning stage, you have to have gender analysis, and you have to do need assessment. So you have to understand what is the gap of gender gap which is existing, be it access to sanitation or be it access to higher education or professional education, and all these things you have to assess. Then moving, for example, entrepreneurship, why it is a huge gap, some 90% gap, gender gap. So that is to be analyzed, and what kind of social, cultural, and the personal and psychological barriers are there, how these barriers could be addressed there in designing the program. So when motivating the women to come out, in the designing itself, you have to integrate gender. So this is what you keep going, the gender planning and then gender specific actual capacity building. You have to also build capacity for the women and men. Say for example, I have mentioned in the beginning itself that it is not the homogeneity. Women are not homogeneous, men are not homogeneous. Some women in the lower, some men in the lower income groups, lower socially lower background will have more issues than the women in the upper income or the elite group. And therefore, everybody's needs. That is why we have the reservation based on caste, and now we are talking about economic reservation also. And therefore, that capacity building is needed because they had experienced historical disadvantage of denial of resources, access to opportunities, access to training, access to the mainstream needs, etc. And therefore, capacity building is needed, and that shouldn't be taken as an anti society. Many people feel that reservation is again anti-people, only those people who are really getting reservation or participating. No, they faced historically disadvantage, I mean, some issues, and therefore they are compensated now in the with the reservation policy. So, and gender sensitive monitoring and evaluation. So I am talking in a very holistic aspect, that the intersectionalities of caste, class, ethnic, race, etc., must also be taken into account. So I think I'll just close by taking to the last slide. So I request Big in charge to move to the last slide, gender international, I mean integrational, not just wrongly written, integrational framework. So this slide is I just give an example and close because it's really 12. I just give one example. For example, organizational culture. I am talking because it's easy to understand. So in the organizational culture, I was talking about how women and gender mainstreaming could take place, like how to induct women into the committees. So there has to be, like for example, we did a gender auditing of women and men, boys and girls representation in committees. So that is what I mean, technical capacity. And in the organization, what has to be done? So somebody is presenting. Okay, equal value of women and men in the workplace. So, for example, there is some activity, say NAC. NAC is there. Everybody has to work. You can't exclude, or you're not supposed to exclude women just because they have responsibilities at household, and therefore they may not be able to stay back for a long, and more opportunities being given. It is a work. It's not just opportunity alone, but assigning responsibilities only will turn out to be an opportunity later, and they will also develop themselves. But what is the kind of a perception for the head of the institution that, okay, if we bring women into the committees, then they cannot stay back for a long and sit and work, and we cannot achieve rank. But there are women's colleges which are really getting very good ranks with women's participation only. So I'm talking about institutions where both men and women faculty members or staff working. So this is what. Then the accountability is like, I just quote one example, the incentives and rewards. Okay, when you're making, I will conclude, sir. I'll try to conclude. So gender assessment is to be done, gender analysis is to be done, and when you take up a program, it has to be right from the designing to what I should say, the implementation and monitoring, evaluation. Till that time, the kind of gender mainstreaming focus should be there, and that is what whatever we have attempted so far is happening. But there is an issue that the gender needs, the strategic gender needs are yet to be captured, because still women's role is seen as reproduction, emphasizing on reproduction and the household duties, the care economy, and their participation outside in the leadership or decision making positions are still in a question, though some have succeeded. Of course, I should also see those who have succeeded also had some background, and therefore the first generation, second generation learners are still to reach the heights, whereas the fourth or fifth generation learners could be in a position to occupy, and their social background also help them to mainstream gender. But different kinds of issues prevail, respective of whether it is the upper income or lower income, whether it's west or the other parts of the globe. So what we actually need is to understand the context in which we are working, the kind of issues, and accordingly prioritize and plan and try to, what I should say, contribute to the policy. So with this, I'll stop. It is already 12, and look for some questions and interactions. There is a question. Can you talk about importance of women and feminist leaders from the perspective of gender mainstreaming? Yeah, very much. It is whatever has happened. I think in the beginning itself, I was explaining, and those who have contributed to this gender mainstreaming concept itself is women's organization and feminist thinkers. And therefore, you cannot undermine that the role of women's movements, women's organizations, and the feminist thinkers who, of course, I also admit here that there are different schools of thought. Like some of the feminists do not believe in the gender mainstreaming at all, because they say that everybody should be treated equal and they have to be given the opportunities, not comparing the position of men, but women have their own freedom too. But in the constructed, socially constructed patriarchal context, it is always needed that some attempts are needed to mainstream gender, and therefore it's very important. And you have mentioned about Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand PM being one major example. I agree. And so it is several countries, Finland, all, mainly even during the COVID context, the progress has been much, much better there in the women governed countries. So I don't undermine that the men are not doing. Men are also doing, but men were there for years together, for long years together. Whereas women started coming only recently, and they when they are gender sensitive, when they are inclusive in their governance, then inclusive in their approach, then definitely they will be democratic and decentralized in their approach, and will contribute to betterment. So, is there any other questions? Goals among the 17 sustainable development goals, can you please explain what is life below water, the 14th point? Yeah, this is about the resources, and it is right from the microorganisms to the sea resources, the water resources, etc., etc. So we are mindless of these resources. We just overexploit the water. For example, one example I can give, the hilly areas where you have the water, the spring water, which is very natural, the natural springs you get. But a corporate or a multinational corporation go there, extract the mineral water and commercialize, or establish a company to produce some chemicals or whatever it may be. So then you are really yeah, so there you are mindless of the resources or the organisms, the species that is existing under the water. I am talking about water here means the sea resources and all the other water resources. And if the water resources, for example, groundwater resources going down only because of the kind of human action. And when it is, we are talking about the third world war will be on water resource. So it is necessary that we have to, how gender could be incorporated in this, that is very important. And recently, I don't know whether you have seen women going harvesting seaweeds from the seas. Like earlier, it was all men who were going there and harvesting that, but now women are trained and they go and harvest seaweeds. And therefore, that is one aspect in which women are now participating. It is not restricted to men alone. So, accordingly, the facilities must be provided, whether it is a small boat or whatever kind of other facilities needed. It has to be with gender sensitivity to be provided. And some people are. Is there any other questions? I don't see other questions there in the chat box. Wanted to ask about the development of gender studies and women's studies as discipline of study and how they are constantly facing lack of funding. Okay, something which is not connected here, but I can try to establish the connection. See, gender mainstreaming, gender study, establishment of gender studies and women's studies in the university or in the education system is one initiative of gender mainstreaming. So the women's studies department will talk about
I think Dr. Manimehalai madam has.
Sorry, there was some problem.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, madam, we can hear.
Hello?
Madam, we can hear, you can speak.
Am I audible now?
Yes, madam, you are audible, you can speak.
அவங்க க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிட்டாங்க.
Madam, if you are able to hear, madam, you can speak.
Hello? Okay.
Madam.
So I was talking about gender studies and women's studies and how the centers are really suffering without regular funding from UGC. Of course, UGC has established thanks to those people who had the idea of instituting women's studies, institutionalizing women's studies, and that is now serving as an academic arm of women's studies. Sorry, women's movements. So whatever you have gathered, the literature developed through the women's movements actions now is to be transferred to the classroom. That is one of the objectives on which we initiated this women's studies. But unfortunately, the perspective is changing. And so there are two things I should take here. When the University Grants Commission is not regularly giving the funding, that they have their own issues of the internal issues. Of course, from the women's studies centers also, you have to regularly submitting their progress report and push for release of grant. But the other aspect is that it is not that always the University Grants Commission will be supporting. It insisted there in the guidelines in the beginning itself when the center is being granted, first maybe one plan or two plan the government, I mean UGC will support, and eventually it is the responsibility of the university or the college to take it forward to make it permanent center and integrate with the other departments. It depends. If it is a college, it can have a center and induct all the other department staff and work on it. And if it is university, you can have a separate department like what we have in Bhagadasan University. And it has to go as any other science or social science department. But that is not happening. So it is not only the UGC, but the the university system and the educational system as such. They have to also be I mean, taking it forward and committed towards it. Any other questions? Okay. Is there any other questions? Because I could not see in mine because there was a cut and again I rejoined. ஏதாவது சமயம் வேற ஏதாவது questions இருக்கா? Okay. So if everything is done, I think we can close. I thank Beck, Bharathasan University, and all the participants for accepting the change in the schedule from Meera to Manimekalai. Of course, you must have been expecting that Meera to be here, and definitely you will get her on Monday 15th. And you had missed her delivery also today. And I apologize for the same, and I thank everyone for their active participation. Thank you very much.
Manimekalai ma'am. Ma'am.
I think Dr. Murugeshwari madam will propose the vote of thanks. Dr. Murugeshwari madam?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, madam, you can go ahead.
Yeah. On behalf of Bharathasan University, PEG, and the Department of Women's Studies, I record my sincere thanks to Manimekalai ma'am. So this is what Women's Studies Department is doing. Anything, anytime we can do it. So just like that, ma'am has proved that. Actually, she had the planned gender mainstreaming in the last day session, but due to some circumstances, suddenly she could be able to join, and she was talking about gender mainstreaming. And totally she was covering about the gender mainstreaming in the area of education, human rights, health, particularly reproductive rights, family planning and all. And mainly she was talking about the leadership role and management role, the characteristics, the female characteristics association, how gender equality and discrimination interferes, the women cannot able to take this top level role. Everything she was explained clearly. And she was clearly explained SDGs. This is what all the institutions, organizations are working at to achieve gender equality by 2030. Women in development, women and development, gender and development and all. And particularly, she specifically mentioned about the development approaches, strategies and all. How the people will see the changes in 21st century. Even this feminism development also originally started 18th century. I think 18th century to 74 years they were talking about the development, particularly from US, Alba Belmont, and from Canada, Emily Howard Stowe and all were talking about the women development approaches and everything. But on the whole, we people are expecting if gender mainstreaming has to achieve in our society, the both dimensions like gender representation and the gender responsive content need to be taken into the consideration and all phases of the policy making process. An effective implementation of the gender mainstreaming requires the preparation and organization. The people in decision making position can make a particular difference here as they have more power to introduce some changes in the society. So with these words, once again I thank all the participants. You have very valuable interaction in the chat box. So I expect that the more changes the society has to mainstream at all spheres. So once again, I thank ma'am and Dr. Prasanna, the organizer of the program, and the participants, and the women's studies faculty members and scholars. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, madam. And I just want to record that today we had a lot of problems since the morning. So suddenly the university was closed for some precautionary purposes, and now this webinar has been hosted through all remote locations through some mobile tethering. That is why we had some issues with that PowerPoint presentation also dropping. But anyhow, we have conducted the session today successfully. So thanks to Dr. Manimekalai ma'am and her team, Dr. Murugeshwari, and all the participants for this wonderful session. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. And so tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, we will be connected with the other speakers. Thank you.